There's this other story that you have, NVIDIA, Oracle racing to get AI chips out of the U.S. ahead of these new export rules. How much is that going to cost them to do? Or you think it's just a cost that they need to do?
I think it's a cost that they need to do. And this is specifically, so we have export controls around chips, and then we have cloud export rules that are saying if you're training your AI models, you basically have to do it in the U.S. And so this is an effort to sort of get ahead of that second piece of it, while at the same time, you know, they're also trying to sell chips out of the U.S. I think it's hard, but what choice do you have? You know, if you are, we are in an arms race of training, bigger and bigger clusters. You want some sort of redundancy and capacity around the world. And the idea that you're going to be constrained and maybe your competitor isn't is very scary to these companies. So
how far ahead do you think we are relative to China when it comes to chip making?
Very, very hard to say, but probably
meaning access to these chips, right? NVIDIA is not able to sell the highest end chips.
Correct.
And how, you know, we keep hearing the Huawei is getting very, very close.
Very close. And we had another scoop this week about the next chip that NVIDIA is going to try to sell. It's going to be on the export list in 2 weeks. Because
it's that good.
Of course, because, you know, and if you talk to the administration officials about it, they're now sort of piecing apart the different parts of the chip, and it can't be good on this or that vector.
So that's the thing I can't tell. So you have Jensen, you know, at the White House making this big announcement. The president's thrilled about that part. But at the same time, he's trying to sell these chips to China as good a chip as he can, which at some level is antithetical to what the administration would ultimately want.
It's completely antithetical, and it's completely core to his business. So I think we're going to really see some real tension play out on this front. And to answer your question, I assume China's further ahead than we think, because we also don't know the depreciation of these chips. This was the theme at our AI event in New York this week with the information. You know, we asked Gavin Baker, what's the depreciation of a GPU? And he said, what's the meaning of life? So these are very unanswered questions, and maybe even that second generation is going to be enough to train the next DeepSeek. So,
and don't forget the enormous spend taking place. I mean, we haven't talked about Stargate that much. What's going to happen down there in Abilene, Texas, in terms of just the enormity of the build taking place. But I did know yesterday, Masa's son was at the White House again. He's been spending a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Jensen Huang, obviously, also in attendance.
Well, how about the fact that Jensen Huang said the whole time they're buying, they're ordering, and people didn't care what Jensen said. He was out of favor.
And there was Masa.
And then Michael Intrader comes in and says they're ordering, What journalist had decided to sabotage this thesis?
I don't know. I don't think there's any. I don't believe.
You don't think there were people who were just so cynical?
I think there's a lot of concern about the overall business model. I think it's incredibly capital intensive. We're talking about CoreWeave, but back to the bigger issue. I mean, Jensen was talking about how China is a true competitor. He said that yesterday.
That's now a positive.
Well, in terms of at least why
the diffusion.
Right. Why you want to allow NVIDIA to own the market around the world, not allow the Chinese to potentially be able to compete. And Masa said much the same. Take a listen when he was asked. Yeah, when he was asked about sort of the Chinese and where things stand in terms of AI deployment.
In the past, China had an advantage of lower wage, but now it is really AI that will make differentiation. Of course, Chinese are also very smart and hardworking, you know, engineers. So it's a head-to-head competition against the new AI revolution.
That's where we stand. And Huawei is a true potential competitor. Nobody argues that NVIDIA is not ahead. They are clearly.
But it feels so much like Russia, United States from the Khrushchev time on. It really does.
I know, but at the end, I mean,
how'd that work out?
Yeah, well, everybody has, you know, it's just a matter of how many nuclear weapons. It's not as though the Chinese are not going to have access to essentially the latest AI models. They will. They will develop many of them. And so are we, you know, I don't know.
When we discovered that there were like Rosenbergs that gave the H-bomb to the Russians?
I don't think so. I think when you're graduating, how many, Carl, is it? How many engineers are they graduating?
Their STEM grads are roughly 4 times ours.
Yeah, I don't think you can question whether it was a spy in that case.
Maybe we're 4 times smarter than they are, our schools.
Microsoft and Meta reported fantastic earnings yesterday after market close. Meta raised their 2025 capex up to a range of $64 to $72 billion, which is up from the previously announced $60 to $65 billion. Microsoft reaffirmed their capex guidance for the second half, but when you parse through the details, it actually turns out that they expect capex to be higher for the fiscal year than what they had previously announced. On the earnings call, Microsoft CFO said they expect fiscal Q4 capex to increase on a sequential basis. That means they expect capex to be higher in Q4 than it was in Q3. If we look at a spreadsheet for Microsoft's earnings, we can see that they spent $21.4 billion on capex in Q3. And so on the low end of the range, if they were to spend $21.5 billion in Q4, that would bring the total up to $85.5 billion in capex for the year, which is higher than the $80 billion they previously announced. Again, that $85.5 billion number is on the low end of the range. We could very well see Microsoft's fiscal 25 capex come in much higher than that. Meta's capex increase makes a lot of sense given that they announced a new standalone AI app earlier this week. It appears Meta wants to compete with OpenAI, and they will need a lot of hardware from NVIDIA in order to do it. Let's get back to the clips, and I'll provide more context as we go.
This is a rare public feud, and it's erupted, like you said, between two tech giants over AI chips and national security. So NVIDIA today blasted Anthropic after the Amazon-backed AI startup called for tighter export controls on advanced semiconductors. That's really what got NVIDIA angry. You mentioned those claims about smugglers hiding chips in prosthetic baby bumps and shipping them alongside live lobsters. Those are allegations that NVIDIA dismissed as tall tales. At issue, though, are Biden-era restrictions called the AI diffusion rule, which should take effect May 15th. These controls aim to prevent China from gaining ground in AI by limiting exports of advanced chips as well as AI models. President Trump is reportedly considering updating these restrictions, adding further uncertainty to an already contentious policy. Anthropic depends heavily on NVIDIA hardware, so there's the irony, but argues that, quote, maintaining America's compute advantage through export controls is essential for national security. So they want lower export thresholds and increased enforcement funding. And that could mean fewer NVIDIA chips sent abroad. NVIDIA fired back, saying, quote, that America cannot manipulate regulators to capture victory in AI, arguing that victory should come through AI companies' innovation, not by restricting the flow of chips. NVIDIA really finds itself in a tough spot, trying to help grow America's AI supremacy while also continuing to sell their chips to other countries. But this clash really highlights the complex balance between innovation, competition, and national security as America's tech giants really navigate this increasingly competitive global AI landscape, guys.
I mean, it's complicated. You know, not the smuggling part. That part I understand, although creative. Just complicated to see the fight emerge between these two. Christina, thanks. Christina Partsinevelos.
Yeah, I guess hiding stuff. Pretending you look pregnant?
Right. We knew there was luggage. We've heard some of these different anecdotes.
I'm not hiding. I want to be clear. I'm not hiding anything. This is all natural. This is all real.
Yeah. Likewise.
Takes a lot of pork roll to get here.
But it's still just so, it's one thing if this is a media report. It's one thing if this comes up through to have it come from Anthropic is super interesting. And I think those anecdotes are going to be especially memorable.
And few false narratives have gone as far as this story about the end of data center spending. I mean, that's the pack of lies started on DeepSeek Monday, back on January 27th, when a Chinese firm claimed to have created a generative AI model using far fewer computing resources than the leading players. All the previously red-hot AI infrastructure stocks were immediately crushed. You know what? They never really recovered. We started hearing that Microsoft was pulling back from the data center investments. AI kingpin NVIDIA didn't bother to defend itself. So the group crumbled. I found it incredibly frustrating because we never had clear evidence that there was anything wrong with the AI infrastructure thesis to begin with. The idea that hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be spent on these new data centers is true. And that's why we stuck with the stocks for the Travel Trust. We defied the data center bears, aided by an interview with data center semiconductor king Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, who told us that demand for his highest-end chips is stronger than ever. And we felt like idiots for doing so. Day after day, we heard about little chinks in the story that, when added together, meant you were long in the tooth if you stayed positive, and you were going to lose a lot of money. Until earnings season came along and the data center bears started getting gored by the bulls. That's when we realized we were right all along. It all started with Vertiv, which makes the physical guts of the data center the power control system. Vertiv reported a fantastic quarter, April 23rd, said its business has accelerated from the fourth quarter. When they came on the show, they told us about their order book being brimming with demand. Then, April 28th, got an amazing set of numbers from Cadence Design Systems, which we knew to be a big partner of NVIDIA. Then we got this misdirection play on April 29. when Supermicro, another partner of NVIDIA, pre-announced weaker numbers, which again made people sell anything connected to the data center. But last night, the bears were trampled to death when both Microsoft and Meta revealed they were totally on board with continuing to spend big on the data center. Microsoft's data center constrained. Mark Zuckerberg at Meta says he needs to keep spending because it's just so lucrative to do so. It's simple. It's necessary if big money is going to be made monetizing his Meta AI site, which he's so crazy about. Even though Wall Street didn't like the guidance we just got from Amazon tonight, it sure doesn't seem like they're backing away from AI infrastructure spending at all. Next thing you know, all the stocks I've been highlighting bust out, and the torture we endured worth every penny. Now, most people would be content knowing that we've made it through the desert to the promised land. Not me. Actually, I want to look into this. I want to know what happened. How did the media so endless out here? Did they ask enough questions? Why didn't they believe Jensen Huang for a minute? They're constantly interviewing bears who wanted these stocks down. Some of them didn't reveal that their bias was rooted in the fact that they were shorting the entire AI complex. There was too much money on the line for the bears to allow the facts to get in the way of a good story. I know it may be hard to believe that huge companies with tens of billions of dollars to spend actually keep funneling that money to the data center suppliers, especially NVIDIA. But that's exactly what's happening. And I think it's not too late to own a lot of the members of the complex, even as I expect that if we wait a few days, the bears will be out again, citing the Amazon Web Services light line. They just can't stop trying to make money at your expense. It's their job. I get that. I just wish they'd explain why they are so negative if the facts don't support their point of view.
Amazon and Apple both reported earnings today after the bell. Amazon beat on revenue and EPS. However, their second quarter operating revenue guidance came in lower than expected, and AWS growth came in at 17% when analysts were looking for 17.6%. On the earnings call, CEO Andy Jassy reaffirmed that demand for AI is very strong right now, and they simply cannot meet all of the demand they are seeing. He said as soon as new capacity gets put in, it gets consumed. That is good news for NVIDIA. Jassy mentioned multiple times that Amazon's working on their own Trainium chips as they're committed to bringing down the cost of inference for their customers. At the same time, Amazon will continue to offer other chips, including those from NVIDIA, to customers alongside their own Trainium chips for the foreseeable future. It appears that Amazon is maintaining its CapEx guidance, which is in accordance with what the AWS VP of Global Data Centers said recently when he said there have been no fundamental changes to Amazon's expansion plans. Overall, HyperScaler earnings this season have been very positive for NVIDIA. Many investors were worried about the hyperscalers pulling back on CapEx in the face of tariffs. But now we know that none of the hyperscalers are pulling back as they are all seeing very strong demand for AI. That is fantastic news for NVIDIA. Now, when it comes to NVIDIA, market participants will shift their focus to two upcoming headwinds: semiconductor tariffs and the AI diffusion rule. But don't miss this point. Both of these issues are issues of regulation. They are not problems of lacking demand, as NVIDIA is still seeing very strong demand for their products. Speaking of regulation, CEO Jensen Huang met today with members of the U.S. House. In his opening remarks, Jensen gave a dire warning that if the AI diffusion rule goes into effect on May 15th without significant changes, NVIDIA will be forced to retreat from the rest of the world. And if that happens, competitors such as China's Huawei will step in and fill the gap. Jensen mentioned that 6 million developers around the world build on NVIDIA's platforms. If NVIDIA were to lose that ecosystem to competitors like Huawei, it would be almost impossible to get it back. Hopefully, we will get news about positive changes to the AI diffusion rule in the coming days. If we do not, and the rule goes into effect on May 15th, that would be very bad for NVIDIA, as it would severely restrict the number of chips they can sell to many countries around the world. We're also waiting for the Commerce Department to conclude its study of the semiconductor supply chain and announce semiconductor tariffs. And so that is also weighing on the stock at the moment. At the same time, despite these short-term headwinds and a negative news flow over recent months, I'm still optimistic about the long-term future of NVIDIA. As we've seen from OpenAI, xAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon, there's still very strong demand for AI. These companies will continue to need more compute from NVIDIA in order to meet that demand. NVIDIA maintains a strong competitive moat across the entire stack, both hardware and software. And companies still get a 40x in their AI factory revenue when they upgrade from Hopper to Blackwell equipped with NVIDIA Dynamo. And so despite the short-term volatility and questions about trade policy, I'm still optimistic about the future of NVIDIA from a long-term perspective. At least that's my view of the situation. Also, I'm starting a new daily stock market update series each morning to cover all of the important news and help you prepare for the trading day ahead. Be on the lookout for more stock market update videos each morning in the days ahead. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.